Hi, my name is Vesna Karapetrova, and we're here today in the Canadian Macedonian Historical Society premises at Canadian Macedonian Place to interview Miss Virginia Stoymenoff for Canadian Macedonian Historical Society. And today is Tuesday, April 15th, 2014. Welcome, Virginia, and thank you for sharing your life story with us here at Canadian Macedonian Historical Society. We really appreciate you taking the time, because I know you have a wealth of information to share with everyone about the history of the Macedonian community here in Canada as well.
Thank you. I did participate in almost everything in the Macedonian community my whole life.
That's why we're so fortunate that we can have this interview today here. Virginia, can you tell us where and when you were born?
I was born in Toronto on May 31st, 1934. And there's a picture of me here, my proud parents. Everybody had pictures like that when they were born. I come by my fatness, honestly.
And who was your mother, and where was she born?
Well, I'm going to start with my mother.
Yes.
She's a very interesting family history. My mother, Nevenka Lazaroff, Nevenka Bogoyev first. She was born March 25th, officially 1910, and probably 1908, because we couldn't find any records, especially when it came time for her to apply for old age pension here. But her father wrote on her passport that she was 2 years younger, so she'd have a good chance to get married here. So she was born in Lerin, and my grandmother, Neda Todorov, was widowed with 5 children, and my grandfather was widowed with 4 children. That made 9. Then they had 5 together. Can you imagine my grandmother having all those children, and all of them left to go to the new country, and she never saw any of them again.
That's quite amazing. And your mother was the last one?
She was the last one.
Of the 14 children?
Yeah, of the 15, of the 5 that were born after. And the oldest was my teta Kata, who married Kole Lako, and then was Teta Toma Paskalev, who married Lazo Paskalev, and he was a prominent member. He was a tailor and had did most of the suits for the men. And then was Mara, who married in the States, and then my uncle, Wojciech Lazo, he was, not Wojciech, Chicho Lazo, he was my mother's brother. No.
Chichko.
Wojciech, yeah, I was right, yeah.
You were right, yeah.
And he was the last one to stay in Lerin. My mother came, she was the last one. She was, in fact, her mother, Baba Neda, was 50 years old when my mother was born. Anyway, Lazo stayed with his family until they all passed away, and then they came in 1948.
And until this time, all the children lived in Lerin. Can you tell us a little bit about your Dedo Bogoyev?
Yeah, no, he was born in Tercia, but he came to Lerin, opened a furna, and he had the only furna in Lerin, and they all came to him to get their bread baked. And he built the house at number 23 Odosoverov, right by the creek, and to house all those children. But they all started to go very quickly. And my mother came in 1920 in November, and she was either 22 or 20.
Virginia, what did your mother tell you about her schooling?
They did have to go to the Greek school, and she went as far as grade 7. And her father made sure that all his children were able to read and write in Macedonian. But it really was with the Bulgarian language at that time, because that's all I had written. And so she learned to read and write and proper grammar from her father.
And what were her experiences at the Greek school?
The children had to speak Greek, of course, and if they were caught speaking to each other in Macedonian, they had to take a tablespoon of castor oil to take that terrible language away. And also on the street, if the older people were caught, the soldiers were around and they were rifle butted.
Now, you had a cousin, Mike.
Yes.
Who you met, who came here. Can you tell us about him?
Mike was the son of Lazo, the last boy that stayed in Leding till all of the older people died. And they spoke Greek. And he considered himself almost Greek because he spoke mostly Greek. And even at that time, by 1948, even the older people had to speak Greek. So I was upset at the time when he came and was speaking very little Macedonian and wanted to speak Greek. But when I realized that we speak English, and we speak English with some Macedonian. Well, they spoke Greek with some Macedonian, so I was a little soothed by that. But
and your mother came to Canada eventually. When was that?
She came in 1920 on a Greek passport, and she met my father, introduced by her sister Toma's husband, Lazo. He was my Tatincha Lazo. And he introduced my mother to my father, Boris Lazaroff.
And what passport did your mother come here with?
A Greek passport.
Now, I understand she was 2 years younger on the passport. Can you tell us the story about that?
Yeah, well, my grandfather, her father, wanted to make sure she got married when she came here. So he wrote her down as born 1910 rather than 1908. And through all the years that she was here, my father only knew that she was born 1910. And so all the census, every census, he wrote that she was born 1910. So at the time when it came for the old age pension, they got letters from her father and from her sisters that were here. They all said that she was born 1908, but the Canadian government wouldn't accept that because all the census said. So she lost 2 years, but which makes it that she really was 100 when she died in 1998.
And she spent a good part of the latter part of her life right here.
She spent 16 years as a resident of Canadian Macedonian Place. And in the last 4 years, she was at Leisure World, the O'Connor Gate.
Right. And I understand that she was very famous for...
Yeah, she made the best solnici of all her family, of all her sisters.
What was your favorite?
Sopras.
Yes, yes. Leek, yes, that's mine too.
As a matter of fact, my father, when he worked at Canada Packers, when he came home late, when he was on the night shift, he'd be home at 12 o'clock. And at that time, she'd have a new zolnik already made. And we were allowed to stay up and have toplo zolnik with my father.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and I understand that you also went to Lerin.
I did.
When was that?
In 1973 I did. And I looked at the house. It was still in pretty good shape. It was rented to some other people. It really belonged to the last son that was there. So anyway, it was rented. I looked at it, and the ground floor was where they had all the animals, and the furno was right beside it, and upstairs is where all the children slept. Everybody slept. Mm-hmm. There was no toilets, and there was a sink on each floor.
Mm-hmm. And you saw all of this?
I did. Went inside. I did, yeah. They let me go in.
Oh.
And then when I went this past summer, the house was almost in ruins. There was nothing done to it, and I couldn't go in. It was boarded up. Mm-hmm. But it was still there, and I knew the number, And it was right in the center of the city, right in the center.
And what was the number again in the street?
It was 23 Odos Soverov. Odos, I think, is street in Greek.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And my hotel that I stayed at this time was Hotel Lingus, which was almost across the street on the other side of the creek. So it was. We just walked over.
Mm-hmm. Very close. Virginia, can you tell us about your father?
Okay, now it's for my father. He was the youngest of three brothers.
And his name?
His name is Boris Lazaroff. His father's name was Lazo. He was born in the village of Verbnik, and that was right on the Greek-Albanian border. And in 1925, when the borders were exchanged with Greece, his village ended up in Albania. Mm-hmm. And the village was pure Macedonian. And when I went there in 2002 is when I went there. And it was all pure Macedonian.
You're still speaking Macedonian.
And it was, he used to say that it was 20 minuti so magare to Vumbil, 20 minutes by donkey to Vumbil, which was on the Greek side. Mm-hmm. And at that time I did go on a donkey, and we went over, and my cousins there, they were petrified going over the border because Greeks still patrolled that border. But we did go, and in Vumbil, there was just some stones around where houses were, and just partial where the church was. Mm-hmm. So if they hadn't changed those borders, Verbnik might have ended up like Vumbil. But where it was still Macedonian, all the kids. And as a matter of fact, when I was there, I took a lot of pictures, and Zoran put them on a CD video so that I could give a lecture on it. And I gave a lecture here on it in 2002.
And we have a nice picture there
of my father's family.
Mm-hmm.
He was here at the time. He came, by the way, he came in 1927 at the age of 20.
Yes.
He was born June 2007.
I'm sorry,
1907.
And who do we have in the picture there?
Yeah, he was here already. Mm-hmm. And this is his mother and his brother that stayed there, and his two children. And he took that picture and put himself in there and had another picture taken. Mm-hmm. So that's his family.
And he was the youngest of three brothers?
He was the youngest of three brothers. His oldest brother, Noam, came to America, to Detroit. Pondo, the middle brother, stayed there to look after his mother. And my father, at age 7, his father died. And my father at age 7 started to do little jobs around in the village and in Bielšte, which was just 7 kilometers away. And he went to Athens about age 11 or 12, and he started working and sending money. And when he was 20, he came to Toronto, and he was sponsored by his best friend Turpo Christoph, and his cousin Jack Nichols.
Mm-hmm. And your father came in 1927?
Yes.
And when he came, he was 20 years old. What kind of passport did he come with?
He came on a Greek passport, mm-hmm. with a Greek name. They changed it.
So this is after the names were Hellenized.
Yeah,
mm-hmm.
And he often said he used it as toilet paper.
And you said he was sponsored by his best friend, and then he came to Canada. What kind of work occupations did he do when he was here?
He got a job right away at Canada Packers, and he stayed there for 18 years. And his job there, as he described it, was in killing the animals, which wasn't very nice, but that's the kind of job that they had. He never was without a job, all during the Depression.
Mm-hmm. 18 years at Canada Packers, yeah. Right? And then I
And-
understand he joined the union and was quite active?
Yes, he was very active in the union, but he was also on other committees. At that time, there was no Canada pension or old age pension, and he was on one of the committees to get an old age pension passed. Unfortunately, he died at age 63, and he never got to receive any pension.
And when was that?
He died in 1970, in April 14th, 1970.
Okay, Virginia, now your parents were married here in Canada, right?
Yes.
Do you know how they met? And
Yes, I think I mentioned that they were introduced by my uncle, and she came in 1930.
right.
Is that what I said before?
She came in 1930.
1930,
that's right.
at the age of 20.
Right, at the age of 20.
And they were married in 1932, in August 1932.
And all the time your father worked hard.
Yes,
And,
he worked at Canada Packers all during the Depression, and he was very active at not only just the union, but in the Macedonian community, and all of that was at the community hall, the Macedonian People's League, and I'll talk about that later.
And
That club, as we called it, was Bulgarian and Macedonian, so there were Bulgarians and Macedonians. And he got into partnership with Todor Kachev, who was the father of our known Macedonian director, Ted Kachev, if you've heard of Ted Kachev. Anyway, he opened this little restaurant on Pembroke and Dundas with Todor Kachev. And then that was on the corner of Pembroke and Dundas, not a very nice district. And later on, that was in 1945.
And it was called?
The Norm's Grill. And I thought I had a picture, but then he opened another little restaurant, and it was not open before. It was called the Sip and Bite.
And where was that?
And that was on Parliament Street at Gerrard. And he also was partners with Metodi Ivanov.
Yes, and how many brothers and sisters do you have?
I have one brother, John, and he was born in 1937.
Now, your parents, your father worked hard in the restaurant, and then eventually where did they end up living and buying a house?
Well, I was born on Mulock Street, out in the West End, and my father bought a house on Dury Street. That was at Runnymede and Dundas, in what was called the Junction. And there were no Macedonians around there, although there were some further east from the Željevo, because we weren't too far away from the Željevo Hall, and before it wasn't even built then. But there were no Macedonians around, and I had a lot of school friends, and my closest ones went to Sunday school, and I went to Sunday school with them for most of my child from age about 7 to about 13. And
your father, Virginia, I know that he was extremely proud of being Macedonian and had a very, very strong Macedonian consciousness. Can you tell us
yes, he
about
did.
Him?
Yes, he instilled that Macedonian consciousness in me, and he influenced me the most. And even during the war, he wanted me to speak to him in English so that he would learn better English. And he was a self-made man. He taught himself. He only went to school maybe 1 year. And I never did, I can't remember if it was what language that year of schooling was. But it wasn't, he wasn't in Albania then, but I was born in 1907, so if he was 6 years old, it went under Greek then. So anyway, when he went to Athens, he taught himself to read and write in Greek. And during the war years, we would sit down and read the newspaper together about the news of the war. And I'd help him with some of the bigger words. And he would talk to me about the difference in politics. And I can't say he called himself a communist, because he was an idealist. He believed in what really the word communist or communism really was. That meant sharing everything and being your brother's keeper. And he instilled in me what he lived by, and that was the golden rule. He says what Jesus taught really was true communism, it's without God. And it's do unto others as you would have others do unto you. And I've tried to live my life like that too.
Mm-hmm. Virginia, your father joined the Progressive Macedonian group.
Yes.
And at that time it was the Macedonian People's League.
Yeah.
Yes.
And their motto was, a good Macedonian is a good Canadian.
And I know you mentioned the Klubo. Where was that?
This is our community hall. This was 386 Ontario Street, and this is where I grew up. I went to music lessons there twice a week, and we lived from the West End. I take the streetcar from age 8 to 13 or 14, twice a week, and then on Sundays we had concerts, and we call them Večerinka, and I was in the children's orchestra. It was the wonderful part of my life.
And Chris Dafev, right? Dafev, he was one of the teachers.
Chris Dafev was a remarkable man.
Yes.
Absolutely
he was
remarkable.
Born in Macedonia. Can you tell us a little about him?
He was born in Radovish, Macedonia. This is a caricature of one of the paintings that someone had given him. And in 1979, I organized this tribute to him. Mm-hmm. He came to Toronto very young, age 18, with only a mandolin and about 25 cents in his pocket. And he gathered all the Macedonian and Bulgarians around. And he started a educational club and music club. And he loved music. He got all these young men that were always singing in restaurants, and made a choir. And he taught all the kids at that time, to play. The lessons were only 10 cents a lesson.
And these were lessons in?
In 386 Ontario.
Yeah, and he taught the children how to play instruments and singing?
Violin and mandolin. And there are pictures here of the orchestra that I was in, and there's a picture over here of picnics, and you can see the old instruments at the bottom, and Christoph is in the middle there somewhere.
So you attended the picnics?
Oh, every year.
Mm-hmm.
These were the Edington picnics, and this was from the progressive movement. Mm-hmm. As opposed to the churches, not churches because a lot of the churches were here too.
The churches,
the MPO. Mm-hmm. It's the Macedonian Patriotic Organization that considered our club the enemy.
Mm-hmm.
And
why was that?
They called our people communists, and our people called them fascists.
Mm-hmm.
So
right. And Virginia, when you were growing up as you were growing up, you were quite involved in several different cultural groups, and we have one picture here.
This is one of the mandolin orchestras. That's me over there. I must have been about 10 or 11. I guess I was 11 there. And Jimmy Campbell was the leader, and Christoph had lost his hearing. And so he retired for a while, and Jimmy Campbell took over both the choir and the children's orchestras. Mm-hmm. And when Jimmy Campbell retired, actually he went to Hamilton to live, and then Bill Quinca became the leader. And this is one of the last pictures. I think I was about 13 there.
And all of these activities were at the club.
At the club.
Right.
And I still play the mandolin in a wonderful mandolin orchestra, the Toronto Mandolin Orchestra of the Shevchenko Musical Ensemble. And I still, we had concerts, Večerinky, every Sunday at the club. And this is just one of the posters that we had. And my friend laminated this for me.
And at the club, this is where you did all your concerts and the practices. Can you tell us a little bit about the layout of the club?
Yes, it's on, the address is 386 Ontario Street. It's just below Gerrard. And on the whole top floor was the concert hall. And it had a big stage. And when we were kids, there was the janitor there. And you know how kids are, they're all boisterous and noisy.
Yes.
He had this little cane from the balloons that came from the exhibition, and he'd go along, and any kid that was making too much noise, they'd get a little switch of it. And it mostly worked.
And his name was?
He was Kozarev.
You still remember Chichko Kozarev, huh?
Yeah, and I remember even my deklamacja. Do you want me to say my deklamacja?
Tell us about your deklamacja.
I guess I was 5 years old then. Tam na Volkana bije kambana, dolo na poleto se peči kjofteto. Kaži na deteto da nego izedi kjofteto ili ke mu pukniš kembeto.
Wow, that's quite amazing.
And all the kids were doing things like that, and we played our solo mandolins or solo accordions or solo violins, and we had plays. And but once a month, maybe once every 2 months by the time rehearsals and everything. And they were wonderful. And as a matter of fact, my first kiss with my future husband was a stage kiss. We were going to play together.
Wow, and what play was that?
Oh, I can't remember it now. But it was, and every Sunday night we had these večerinky. And most people worked 6 days at that time. They were, so that's why we had the concerts on Sunday nights. So I was there twice a week with my mandolin lessons, and then večerinka. And then when I joined the choir, I couldn't wait to join the choir. I couldn't wait to be 16.
Why was that?
Because they were having so much fun, because they were older than me. And they used to go on bus trips to different places to perform, especially in Windsor and Detroit and across Ontario. And that's where my husband, Tommy Stoymenoff, kept eyeing me.
Right.
And I was, by 17, I agreed to go out with him. 9 months later, we were engaged.
Wow,
And 9 months after that, we were married. And my father was having 50 fits.
He didn't like the idea.
He hated the idea because, first of all, he was 12 years older than me. And he was Bulgarian. And his mother was the terror of the community. Everybody was afraid of her. And I went to live with her in her house.
And this is a wonderful, beautiful picture of your wedding day.
Yeah, that was my...
You as a bride.
Yeah. And this is my family.
Did your father eventually accept?
Well, they had to.
Yes.
They had to. But I really disappointed my father on 2 accounts. One was that I didn't go to university. I thought I fell in love and didn't need to go to university. And the other was I married a Bulgarian.
So your father definitely was not happy about that.
No, he was not happy at all.
Yeah, because you mentioned that when you were at the club as kids, you didn't see a lot of difference between the two.
I didn't know who was Bulgarian, who was Macedonian. My best friend was Bulgarian, and I didn't know that.
Right.
And Kochev, when I came to fundraise for Canadian Macedonian Place, he says, "Well, you know I'm Bulgarian." And I said, "No, I didn't know."
Yes.
Because his wife was Macedonian. I knew that. Because my other best friend at that time, Lyra Palmerov, her father was one of the biggest Macedonians and one of the stalwarts of the club. We call it the club. Everybody called it the club.
Yes,
or in Macedonia we call it the klubo. Kjoemen and the klubo.
And the people in the club were the minority of the Macedonian immigration, you think?
Yes, because they had the MPO and the church, St. Cyril's. And, well, most of the St. George's were MPO.
MPO meaning?
Macedonian Patriotic Organization.
And they did not have the same political philosophy, beliefs. Now, Virginia, I know that you mentioned the adults at the club were never real communists, but they were portrayed like that by the media. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
They were communist sympathizers because the Communist Party was the one that said they would free Macedonia.
Which communist party would this be?
Well, it was when they were here, it was the Communist Party of Canada, and there was in Macedonia, well, in Europe, you knew that they were the Macedonians were all that were real Macedonians sided with the Communist Party so that they could free Macedonia. It was all about Macedonia. Everything was about Macedonia.
So it was not really the fact that their communist beliefs or.
No. But as kids, I grew up in the cultural part. That was my life. I knew nothing about politics, and the cultural part of 386 Ontario is the best of anybody could ever hope for. As I said, I was there for music lessons and the choir after, and then they started in the early 50s when the Senator McCarthy started to have his own war against the communists. People started moving away from the club because they thought that they would get on some alien lists, and they were afraid. Everybody was afraid. Communism was a terrible word then. If anyone was a communist, they were like dirt, or worse. Anyway, our club disbanded. There was less people, and then the Bulgarian-Macedonian shift started. Because they were friends at the beginning, then they started to break away, especially after the war, because Bulgaria went with the Germans.
Yes.
So then the Macedonians started to move away from the Bulgarians, and those that were friends sometimes weren't so friendly. So
divisions started.
The divisions, and then they started to decide how the club was going to be divided. The Macedonians couldn't carry it by themselves, so that's why they had to sell it. So my beloved club was sold at the time that I was pregnant with my first child. It was a serious loss to people like me, because after that I had nowhere for my children. They didn't have any place to grow up as Macedonians.
Virginia, you told us that in the club there were a lot of cultural activities for children, music and plays, and also I understand there were other cultural activities going on.
Yes, I told you about the concert hall, which was the whole second floor. On the main floor was where the back room was where we held our rehearsals and music lessons. And on the other side, the front was rented to other organizations, and most often by the Croatian Tamburica Orchestra. And in the center and in the basement was the linotype room, where the Novo Vreme newspaper was printed. It was a monthly newspaper. And the editor was Simeon Cvetkov, but he had assistants, and other people were editors over the years too. One was Dincharali and Raichev, and also Sika Dafova, Sika's Christoph's wife, did some editing and did linotype. I tried that linotype, and it's hard.
Difficult.
It's hard because each one of those letters takes up a certain space, and you know, if you the newspapers were all in straight columns. The left one had to match the right one, and I did it for about a week, and I couldn't do it.
And in the newspaper, it was like a community newspaper with all the cultural
and
events?
political. It was political as well.
So you received news from Macedonia
Yeah,
as well
and
as to
during
what
the
was
war,
happening
and
during the war?
yeah. So and it was written. Everything was written in Bulgarian. Unfortunately, it wasn't until 1946 when the Macedonian language was standardized, and things started coming out in Macedonian print. But
And with your father and mother, what language did you usually speak?
I spoke. My father wanted me to speak in English to him so he would learn better, but my mother, I spoke to her in Macedonian every word until she died in 1998. No, 2000. What am I talking about? 2008.
2008. So
Yes.
she lived a nice long life.
She lived, she was either 98 or 100.
Great.
Yeah.
And just going back in time, we have another wonderful picture here of the Ilinden picnic gathering.
Yeah, we had picnics every year, and as you can see, there are a lot of people. And in the first one that you showed, we had a huge group. And this one, because you know, as I said, there were the two political factions.
Yes.
In this one is one of the Pope is here, Pope Iliev, and almost next to him is Spiro Vasiliev, who is Spiro Basil, as he was sometimes known as. So, you know, the two opposites. So that's when we all came together. This was 1945, after the war. So we were still all Macedonians. Doesn't
Right.
matter the political genre.
And then as years went on, you also had more activities
Yes.
and you mixed
Yeah,
together
we
with
were-
Macedonians.
With my cousins, we were always together socially as well, and my social group was all Macedonians. My school ones were the only English ones that I had, but my social life was always Macedonian. And there was a bowling league that started at St. Cyril's Church. They had bowling league in the basement, and my friends wanted me to join, but I felt uncomfortable. They didn't. They kept saying, "Oh, nobody cares," but I felt uncomfortable because I thought that everybody thought, "Oh, she's a communist."
Because
But,
you had belonged to the club.
Yeah, and it was known as a communist club. But finally I did join, and those were the best social years of my life. We had a fabulous group. Van Petrov was the one that organized the league, and we were called the Young Married Macedonian Couples League because there was already a Macedonian Married Couples League.
And when did that couples league start?
It was in they started earlier because it was in the church, but I didn't join in till I guess after the late 57, 58, 59, somewhere around there, late 50s. And it went on till the early 80s. And our kids were small, and we had picnics and bowling banquets and social days. And all our kids knew each other from then because we brought them to the picnics. And
So that was a way that your children were
Yeah.
involved and
Yeah.
introduced to
until
Macedonian
they
culture.
became in their teens and they were no longer interested.
Yes.
And that's actually when our bowling group disbanded because people got older and then they had grandchildren. So, but that was a wonderful time. And I don't know what else I can say about that. We really enjoyed it.
Yes, so you were very active in the bowling club, and
Yes.
then slowly as as you mentioned, as it disbanded because people were getting older. But there was an interesting event that happened in 1976. You told us about one evening that you were reading a newspaper and you
Yeah.
noticed that there was an article about another community.
Yes, I was all alone on my dinner table. My family had gone, and I'm looking at the newspaper, and I'm seeing the Estonians got enough money to build a nursing home, Estonian nursing home. And they're half the immigration of the Macedonians. And I thought, what the heck? They can do it, so can we.
And
So then I started recruiting my relatives and my circle of friends. I got absolutely nowhere. And the Yankoffs, Vas Yankoff and Z Yankoff, lived across the street from us. And one day I went over there, and I'm asking them to join. And Dolly Petroff was there. And she says, well, John Bidoff from St. George's is doing the same thing. So she
Great minds think alike.
so I called him, and he indeed his group was since 1969. They were and they incorporated themselves as the Macedonian Senior Citizen Center Association in 1971, and so I joined them, and I joined them in 1977.
And that's when the land was purchased?
That's when the land was purchased for $404,000 something, and I was on the board from then, and those were exciting times because getting architect, getting builders, getting the land was already purchased. Actually, they were just before I came on. They had purchased that land through. It was a Loblaw store, and it was through Gale and Weston that the Bidoffs were able to get it. Mostly Dotsa, because she was friends with Hillary Weston.
Mm-hmm. And as you said, there were exciting times in getting the name and the logo and everything set up for the
And we had meetings almost every week, and we met first at people's houses, and then there was the men's group from the club had rented a place at Thorncliffe, and they had that place as a little cultural center for themselves. They played cards there, so we met there for the meetings.
This is the men's group from
the club.
From your club?
Yep.
Oh, so they continued to meet.
Yeah.
Okay. Now.
But in the meantime, if I can just go back a little bit, the St. Clement's Church was being built, I think in 1964. But after the club disbanded, those Macedonians from there didn't want to lose the Macedonian name. And they, including my father, went on the committees to build St. Clement's Church. And you'll see a lot of those names that were prominent in the club were also helped build St. Clement's.
Okay.
So it wasn't the politics, it was the name, it was the Macedonians.
Right. And Virginia, it was also when you joined the board of directors, there were a lot of prominent Macedonian names. Do you remember some of the first people on the board? Yes,
there was, of course, John Bidoff, Van Petroff, and
Vasa?
Oh, of course, Vasa Evans was very prominent too. It was her job to get the list of people that would be the first residents of CMP. And those were really exciting times, and there were a lot of people that put their name down that didn't come. My mother was one of them. She had her name down but didn't come at the beginning. Marilyn Trentus's mother was one of the first ones.
Okay.
I can't remember offhand.
Fototomov.
Oh yes, Fototomov. He was, and a very interesting anecdote with Fototomov. After the place was built, he and I and I can't remember who else was. The place was built, but wasn't finished. At that time, I was administrator. Maybe I should go back before that. We went into the greenhouse, and there was nobody around. The door locked itself, and there was no way that we could get out. We couldn't come back. And the greenhouse had windows, and we were waiting for someone to come across the street to see if they could see us. I wrote "help" with lipstick on the windows. And finally somebody came and they opened it. We came out. But in the meantime, I used to come, because I didn't live too far away, and I was so excited. I just loved the place right from the beginning. I just felt like it was my home as well, a home away from home. I used to get on my bike after work or on weekends and just ride over there and take pictures, and it was wonderful. Anyway, after it was finally built, they asked me to be the first administrator.
That's great. Virginia, can we just talk a little bit about the fundraising? There must have been a lot of work that went on.
There was a lot of fundraising. We had, even before, the Bidoff group had fundraisers that I didn't know about before I joined. But after that, we had many fundraisers, and one in particular we had at the Royal York Hotel. We had a lot of people, and we raised, I don't know the exact figure, but it was a very big start. And we always do fundraising, and even now we do the golf tournament. I'll maybe talk about that later.
Okay.
But they asked me to be the administrator.
When it first opened?
When it first opened.
That must have been a big job.
It was a very big job, but I had never done. I worked for a doctor. I was a medical secretary for most of my life to that time. And I'd managed offices, but I'd never managed a building. And I told them, that if I do this, you've got to understand, and you got to help me along. Well, when it finally opened, we had a little difference of opinion with some people that were coming in, and I didn't agree with that, so I gave my resignation 2 months later. So I left in 1979, in August 1979. The place opened in June 79.
And then what did you continue to do as your career progressed?
I took the real estate course, and I was a real estate agent for 25 years. And in 1981, I was voted as Salesperson of the Year. And that was not just...
Congratulations.
That wasn't just an award for any money or anything. It was for being involved in the community and doing other volunteer work. At that time, I was on the board of CMP and also on the board of the Shevchenko Musical Ensemble.
Now, Virginia, with all your involvements outside of your family, how did you find time to balance both family, home life, and your other interests?
Well, you know the old saying, if you give the work to a busy person, it'll get done. And that was true. You always make time for things that you want to do. The thing that was the hardest for me when I joined was doing the minutes. I'd never done minutes before. And that was the hardest job for me to do.
And it was hard because it was something new.
Yeah. Also in 79, another reason, it wasn't the reason that I left, but I was doing a tribute to Christophe, and he was 85 at that time. He was my coom as well, and I was doing all the arranging. It was my idea to begin with, but I had other people helping, of course.
But you initiated.
I initiated it, and I was told by the board that I had to divest myself of that because of the association with the Communist Club.
Even as late as 79, there was still a stigma.
Yeah, so I didn't divest myself. I still went on, and that folder that you saw was the program, and it was a wonderful evening.
Tell us about the evening, because he was quite a cultural.
He was wonderful.
Revolutionary for our community.
He was.
Truly.
He was. He taught the whole Macedonian community how to play. And we had a section called I Remember, and we had microphones around, and the students would get up and say, I remember, and they'd give an anecdote of it. And one of them said, when a hard part came, they would blow their nose. Another one said, around that hot stove when they were in the old place on Berkeley Street, before my time, they were sweating near it. Those that further away were freezing. Mm-hmm. And he would buy, at that time, I think he was making maybe 20 cents a lesson. And one of them got up and said, we paid our 20 cents, and then he would go to the store and buy creamsicles for all the kids. So, and he never had children of his own, and he called all of us his children. Mm. So anyway, that was a good tribute, mm-hmm. and he deserved it.
And were there many people there?
Yes, there were. Mm-hmm. Also, not just from the Macedonians, but from the Ukrainians as well.
Because he went on and taught.
Yeah, he was very prominent in the Ukrainian community as well, because he taught the choirs and the orchestras. Mm-hmm. And he did not just the Ukrainians, but he did the Czechoslovaks, and I forgot which other one.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yes, Virginia. Now, with the after the tribute, a few years passed, and then in 1985, you came back to.
Yeah, they called me in 1985. They called me to go back on the board.
Okay.
And I did, of course, and I've been on ever since. And I've been doing the minutes and doing the record keeping. And I was also responsible for redecorating the place in I forgot which year. Mm-hmm. But and I did the 15-year anniversary.
Canadian Macedonian Place?
Yeah, the anniversary. I did that one.
Mm-hmm. And in 1990, in 1985. You also you came back to join Canadian Macedonian Place on the board of directors, and then in 1990 you nominated Pete Kondo for the board as well. Can you tell us what came from that?
And before I do that, in 1981 I joined the Shevchenko Musical Ensemble, the Toronto Mandolin Orchestra, and to this day I'm the only one from the children's orchestras that still play in a mandolin orchestra. And we have a wonderful orchestra, and I have a picture here of our orchestra. So it's a symphony orchestra with mandolins instead of violins, and it's fabulous. And when we have our concerts, it's we have the woodwinds, and we have a full timpani. And all sections of the mandolins, like the mandola, which is like the viola, and the tenor bass, which is a little, the tenor mandolin, which is a little bigger. And we have the big mando bass that's played with a pick, and it's huge. Mm-hmm. So it's...
the sound is amazing.
The sound is amazing. Mm-hmm. In fact, we're going to have a concert in 3 weeks.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. Now, Virginia, you also...
We'll go back to the 1990...
Yes. 1990 nomination of Pete Kondo.
Yeah, mm-hmm. Yeah, because we had nominations then, and I nominated him. And
for the board of directors.
For the board of directors. Mm-hmm. And he had a great idea of starting a Macedonian Historical Society. And we brought it to the board. He brought it to the board, and then we were both instrumental in getting the board to agree. And we went through the
space. You were given space.
No, the organization New Horizons.
Yes.
New Horizons for seniors. So
Those were grants that we were given?
So Pete did the first grant to get the New Horizons to pay for some of the things that we wanted to do to get us started. And that got us with the first group of interviews that we did in 1990, 91 and 91. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then I got the second grant, and we did this.
The renovation here for the
so we
Historical Society.
refigured the space for the Historical Society.
Great, and tell us about Boris Christoph.
Well, Boris Christoph came on our board of the Historical Society, and at that time we were still, at the beginning we were called the Canadian Macedonian Place Historical Society because we were with them, and they helped us along. So Boris, he was a lawyer. He was also on the board of directors of Canadian Macedonian Place before, and he got us registered as a charity and as a Canadian Macedonian Historical Society in 1991, and we're here.
Right, and Virginia, 1996 to 97, you were president?
Yes.
Of the Historical Society?
Yeah, I was, and that's when we got our brochure together, and I'd like to show that.
And the logo, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yes. Virginia, here's the example of the Canadian Macedonian Historical Society pamphlet that you worked on while you were president with your group. Can you tell us about it?
Yeah, well, Tony Markovsky worked on it a lot for the 2 or 3 years before that. It took us 2 or 3 years to come to this, but at the time in 1996, we really worked hard on it, and Bill Branoff had his own printing company then. And I was there almost daily getting it perfected, and our whole board at that time participated in not only just the wording, but then we had the doors of Stoymenoff for 1,000 years history, and then we had opened it up, and we had on Macedonian on one side and English on the other side with our aims and what we're all about. So this is a very important pamphlet, but the doors were a nice addition. Anyway, I left the board in '98, and I went on the board of the Shevchenko Musical Ensemble because I had gone to one of the Classical Mandolin Associations of America convention in, I forgot where it was right off, and Atlanta. It was in Atlanta.
States?
Yeah, it was an American association, and I was so impressed with the quality and everything, and I thought, gee, that would be wonderful to bring to Toronto and play with our orchestra. So that happened in 2002, but I had to be on the board to get everything. It took us 3 years to get everything arranged. So we did that. It was a really wonderful event, and we called it Mandolins of the World. And I was on that board of the Shevchenko until 2011 when I came back here.
And when you came back here, you were also you became very involved in the Macedonian Canadian Historical Society.
Very involved, and wanted to do the interviews again because I always felt that they were most important, and nobody did anything after 1992. So that was the thing that I wanted to do most, and I really am very pleased and passionate, almost passionate, not as much as Macedonian stuff, but about the Shevchenko Musical Ensemble.
And what is it, Virginia, that creates such passion, do you think, in you about the ensemble?
Well, not only just the music. I mean, you were at the concert that for the Macedonian dance concert.
Yes,
And
Makedonka?
Makedonka. And the Ukrainian dance group was there.
They were.
And you heard the music.
Yes.
And you saw the dancers. And the music we played was wonderful. I just loved their music. And we were just like a family there too. So I almost had two lives. And I'm still there. I enjoy my life there. And I enjoy my life as a Macedonian. They know I'm Macedonian. In 2002, I had both knees replaced. And I'd been in the orchestra at that point since 1981. And this is what they gave me as a get well card. And they all know that I'm Macedonian. I never hid that part.
Yeah, Virginia Makedonka, Stoymenoff. Yes, that's a beautiful
And they said Cole, but what did they know? They're Ukrainian.
Yes.
I should say something about the Shevchenko Musical Ensemble. It's a group that is a choir, mandolin orchestra, and dancers. And we put on fabulous concerts. Our annual concert is always in May. We do a mandolin orchestra concert in November, and we do different concerts at different places. Now, it's a semi-professional group, and we pay the professionals, and we have to pay professional wages, union wages. So that's why it's we do fundraising. I'm fundraising there, fundraising here, fundraising, and people see me coming. They just say, "How much this time?"
And that's a wonderful picture.
Yeah, so my husband was in the choir. He was, as I mentioned before, he was in the Macedonian choir, which we called the Balkan Echo at that time. I don't know if I mentioned that at that time.
When you were young.
Yeah, when
in the club.
Yes, in the club. The choir was called the Balkan Echo.
And your husband was in it?
Yeah, he had a nice tenor voice. In fact, in the Balkan Echo choir, it was he and Ted Petkoff that were the sole tenors, and they carried the whole tenor section. It was a great choir, but this choir from the Shevchenko, it's really, really good. It used to be a male chorus, but they started it, just a group of guys in mid-50s. And when they started all dying off, they got women in there too. So now it's a mixed choir.
So both you and your husband are very musical, talented musically?
He actually had a perfect pitch. He wouldn't let me sing anywhere near him because I can't hold a tune. That's why I play the mandolin.
But you can play and
but
you can dance, Macedonian.
Oh yeah, I can dance.
And do your children also enjoy music?
Yes, they do, and my grandchildren.
Can you tell us, Virginia, a little bit about your family now?
Yeah, my...
two boys you have?
Yeah, I've got two boys. Gary is my oldest. He was born April 12th, 1956, so he just had a birthday. And my other son, Chris, was born April 29th, 1959. There's 3 years difference. And Gary has 3 children. Alexis is, she was born January 8th, 1985. And her sister Lauren was born on her birthday, January 8th, 1988. And the son Evan was born 1990 on May 29th. Alexis went to, had her master's in journalism in Vancouver and ended up living there. Lauren was taking architecture in London and Ottawa, and she ended up there. That's where she's living. And Evan is finishing off in London, Ontario, and I'm praying he doesn't stay there. And Chris has 2 children. Aaron is the oldest. He was born February the 11th. He's 21. I can't remember the year.
Yes, 90.
Yeah, 1990. And Shayna was born November the 26th in
95?
95.
Mm-hmm. Great. And you had, as we showed the card, some medical work on your knees.
Yeah.
But now it's been a while since that.
Yeah,
operation,
this
right?
was, I was 65 years old then, and I was told that new knees don't last more than 15 years. And my friend, my Bulgarian friend, she said, so you'll be 80 years old then, what do you care? Do it now. So that really inspired me. So here I am, 80, and I'm still getting around. I still do autos, and although it hurts sometimes, otherwise I would be in a wheelchair by now because I could hardly walk at that time.
And you're doing really well.
Yeah.
Great.
And I had another really big scare in 2004. I was being investigated for something entirely different, and I had a CAT scan. And they found a spot on my lung, and it was cancer, lung cancer. So I had a removal of my lower lobe of my right lung, mm-hmm. and I went through a series of chemotherapy, lost my hair, and I'm well.
And
except for this chest cold that I've got now.
Oh, we can hear you loud and clear. That's no problem. Virginia, can you maybe tell us a little bit about you're truly a pioneer in so many ways as a woman, a Macedonian woman growing up in Canada. Can you tell us some advice perhaps that you think would be helpful for the future, for the future generation of young Macedonian women?
Be involved in whatever you can, because everything is experience, and the more you're involved, the more experience you'll get. And
yes, and also, Virginia, I wanted to ask you, I mean, we definitely touched on your many accomplishments of being involved in the Macedonian community and truly being very instrumental in starting some of our very successful cultural places, such as the Historical Society, and being here in Canadian Macedonian Place too, with your involvement to have that happen. Can you perhaps tell us what you're really proud of? I know it's a lot and it may be a hard question, but anything that really strikes you as something that you really feel very proud?
I guess I'm really proud of Canadian Macedonian Place because this was in my heart. This was, I loved every minute that I was a part of it. Mm-hmm. And I guess you can say I'm passionate about it. Mm-hmm. And also the Historical Society, I'm passionate about that too. Mm-hmm.
And you're passionate about the Macedonian spirit and the Macedonian consciousness. What do you?
I had another picture that I wanted to show. Whenever there's anything Macedonian,
right?
I went to New York, the very first in 1988, when we took a bus and protested against we went to the United Nations to protest what the Greeks were doing at that time.
Yes.
This was 88.
About the name and...
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And we had posters. We went along and went to the American Embassy, the United Nations, and the Greek Embassy with these big placards. And I have a picture of me holding this placard that says Macedonia...
for the Macedonians?
No, Free Macedonians or something. I can't remember, and I meant to take that picture. Mm-hmm. Anyway, I didn't.
Yeah. Well,
so anytime there's been anything Macedonian, I'm there, right, number one. And flag raising, and with the United Macedonian Diaspora, I haven't missed a conference. I was in Macedonia this past summer, and I was really enthused. Mm-hmm.
Well, I think, Virginia, your father is very proud of you, of all the involvement that you have continued to carry out in the spirit of of Macedonianism and making everybody else really aware of the cause.
Yeah, I'm really, if I have one real regret, and that is that my children didn't have a place to grow up Macedonian like I did. And at that time, we couldn't, as I mentioned before, the stigma, we just couldn't go to the churches. Although even the church wasn't built until 1964.
So it was a period in between.
Yeah, and my kids were small then, and then when they became teenagers, they weren't interested. And
Right.
Even though that where I lived in East York, and the school and the East York Collegiate, there were a lot of Macedonians, and they both have Macedonian friends. But they don't have that consciousness like I have.
And I know that right now, with your involvement in getting this project of interviews going, you're continuing your fundraising. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, we plan eventually to get a proper place. We've got lots of space here, but we have no windows. This is at this end is all below ground, and at the far end is the ravine. So the apartments at the far end are open onto the ravine, but here we're totally landlocked. So we have no air, and we really do have to get a proper place. So on these interviews, I'm asking the people to make a donation, and hopefully it's a start. And we've been doing that. That's for the Historical Society. Now we do fundraising for Canadian Macedonian Place, and we've had the golf tournament for Canadian Macedonian Place, and that's how we're doing with CMP here. We're renovating each room, each apartment, to ultra-modern status, and they're very, very nice. Now they're small, but that's all you need. And if I didn't have such a nice place where I am, I'd probably come. Excuse me.
And Virginia, на крајот може да ни кажеш можеби од мајка ти кога беше тука во местото, во Canadian Macedonian Place, што ќе речеше мајка ти ако беше сега?
Много беше удобно тука. Се му беше, што сакаше тука беше. Ако сакаше да биде со другарки, беа тука. Ако не му беше кеф, заклучи вратата и си седи на апартментот си опури телевизион. И таа многу убаво плетеше
Крошеин,
Што е дума?
Плетеше милина.
Но не милина.
Crocheting.
Не ми текнива думата, го знам, but anyway. Му беше многу удобна раката.
Гоблени?
No. Не ми текнива.
Плетеш, не? Окей.
Плетеше... Doesn't matter. Anyway, we spoke Macedonian. Си го време. И го беше тука, гледав at least once a week. И го беше тамо на Leisure World. I was there at least 2 or 3 times a week. And I have to tell you about Leisure World too, because while I was on the board here, at one point they were opening the door. The Ontario government was opening the doors for funding for nursing homes. So I made the application to get a nursing home, and although we were turned down, they gave those. I think there were a total of 500 beds they gave to different people. I called the ones that got it, and one was Herman Grad of Leisure World. So I spoke to him, and I said, we have a perfect place here. That it's already zoned for nursing home, like the back part, and even the part by the greenhouse. So I got them all to come and to see the place. They decided that it was not suitable, and they said they found a place just up the street. So I was able to, with other people, but it was my initiative to get a floor, a Macedonian floor.
That's wonderful. So there's a Macedonian
There's
floor
a
available?
Macedonian wing in O'Connor Gate, Leisure World O'Connor Gate, on the second floor, Suite 2B. So I was instrumental in that. So that's another thing.
Congratulations! That is very important, because we have a growing population who are definitely going to be needing.
And I was in charge of getting people, artists, getting all our artists to submit something to decorate the place. And Alex Jigaroff did the dining room with all different, about 5 or 6 different pictures of food, with Zolnitsi and Piperki and
in the Leisure World.
In Leisure World.
Okay.
And my cousin Kathy Lacko, she did a cut glass, stained glass of a Zdravets in one of the windows. Michael Close, we had a little bit of a tiff because I don't like his work. You know, the
abstract.
I don't like abstract. And I asked him if he would do something different. So he did a beautiful picture of St. Jovan Church in Ohrid. And he did a masterful job. I'm telling you, it's beautiful. You think it's alive.
Very realistic.
Yeah. And Nikola Belchevsky did a statue of a Macedonian woman. And Georgi Danevsky did a huge painting of a marketplace in old Macedonia with horse trading, and so it's there.
That's wonderful, and I'm sure a lot of people
and that was my initiative.
And that was your initiative to decorate it with Macedonian artists' work. That's wonderful.
So we gave our artists work. We paid, but not nearly what it was worth. And we paid Georgi Danevsky, I think, only $500. I think it's worth more than, right now, probably about $50,000.
Great. Wonderful. Virginia, was there anything else that you'd like to add? That this was great information about the Leisure Home initiative that you had.
Well, I think I've given you my whole life.
That's wonderful. And I'd like to thank you for your time and the information you gave us. It's very valuable. And on behalf of all of us at the Historical Society, Canadian Macedonian Place, we wish you good health and a lot more years of dancing Macedonian oros and playing your mandolin with the orchestra.